What would you say if I told you you are responsible for your brother? Would you be one of those people who said, "I don't have a brother, I don't have siblings, um, you don't know what my siblings did to me." Would you be one of those people? If your answer to that question if your answer to that question is yes, then you are not clear on the things of the spirit. Let me explain why. By definition, our neighbor is our brother. The reason that the Lord says to us, be mindful of your neighbors, love thy neighbor as thyself. And people try to separate it, right? They try to say, well, if they're not in the faith, then they're not your brother. Yes and no. Yes and no. People of the faith should always be treated as a brother. And if they are not of the faith, I'm not going to be the one to tell you that you should, because there's a lot of people who weren't of the faith that Jesus talked to, and they ended up becoming part of the faith. So to isolate someone out like that, I think is a real problem. But before we begin, let's go off into Genesis chapter 4, verse 9, where God asks Cain specifically, "Where's your brother Abel?" And Cain says, "Am I my brother's keeper?" You see, that was the worst thing that Cain ever could have said to God. And what amazes me to this day is that God didn't kill him in that moment. Because the reality is that when Cain made that comment, "Am I my brother's keeper?" What he did was he demonstrated the greatest level of disrespect and pride that we had seen in the Bible to that date. And so what ends up happening is that now God has issues. And as a result of his obsolence, God said, "You know what? I'm going to curse you. Everything about you. You're done. This is what you did. Your brother's blood is calling up to me. And as a result, you're done." And he cursed him. And Cain, of course, began to cry. "Ooh, your punishment is too harsh." And so God put a mark on him to protect him, which interestingly enough goes to show the love of God. And it's always amazing. So here's the thing I want you to understand: none of us is an island. We each need one another. And we often try to argue that. We try to think, "Oh, I'm a loner. I don't need nobody. I'm better off by myself." If that were true, then you wouldn't have such a bad attitude. I'm sorry, but it's a fact. If you really are that great by yourself, then you're happy. You don't have a bad attitude. You look forward to being alone. We naturally long to be around other people. That's part of our genetic makeup. Just as God tells us he left a spot in us for a longing for him, he also left spots in us that we would long for community and to be around one another. We are designed for community. It's a whole part of who we are. We need that camaraderie. We need people we can feed off of and we can be around, we can dance with, we can do things with. There are times when we will be alone, and that's okay. But an entire life filled with being alone, it's unreasonable. One of the other reasons we know that it's unreasonable is because one of the first things Jesus did when he got his ministry is he started to go find his 12. Clearly, he's demonstrating for us that we need to be in connection with other people. Now, of course, there are a million other reasons, but tonight we're talking about being your brother's keeper. We are responsible for each other, and it should be both our honor and our privilege to assist one another. So, what do I mean by that? People often think it's about money because that's like the conversation of the day. And the reason that I want you to understand it's the conversation of the day is because we have more millionaires and billionaires than we have ever had in the history of the world at this point in time. And so money is at the forefront of everybody's mind. But that's not actually what this helping your brother means. So let me give you assistance. When we look at our brother, one of the things that we have to understand is that sometimes we run into adult people who don't have a lot of skill. And if we have the skills that they are lacking, it is thereby our responsibility to help them develop those skills. Now, there are going to be some who are going to say to you, I don't want your help. I'm fine. I don't need anything. I don't this. I don't that. Okay, okay, okay. Let them be. Just let them be. You don't have to save the world. But what you do want to do is for those who are really looking for a way to learn. One of the ways that we keep our brother is that if we have the ability to help them, we help them. And so we're going to talk about levels 1, 2, and 3 real quick. And I'm just going to give you a brief summary because this is the easiest way to understand it. Level 1 is if they don't have basic skills, if they don't know how to handle money, how to do a checkbook, how to run or use their debit card, if they have way too much month at the end of the money, these are people who need to learn how to get their finances in order. And a lot of times they don't make a lot of money. And so we're talking about people who don't have those basic skills. Level 2 are people who have kind of figured out how to handle some things, but they're still struggling. Like maybe they don't know how to make money come into their house, but they know how to manage it. Okay. But you're great at actually bringing money into the house. Then take the time to teach them. And the Bible does not tell you you have to do this for free. You can charge them something, just be realistic about with their budget, what you're charging them, right? Unless this is a class or something, that's different. Then level 3 is when you are talking about people who want to figure out how to acquire real estate, how to have real tangible property, whatever their case scenario is. They have a family and they don't know how to do a grocery shopping or meal planning. Take the time to teach them that because that's a skill that they can utilize that will make a huge difference in the rest of their life. Like it allows their family to eat, it allows their family to go through and be successful on that level. Are you with me? And so this is one of the things that we want to look at when we are our brother's keeper. But I want you to understand something because while we just talked about money being at the forefront of people, I want to take you into Second Timothy chapter 3 verses 1 through 5 because this tells us a great deal about what we are dealing with today. And Second Timothy says, "You should know this, Timothy, that in the last days there will be difficult times, for people will love only themselves and their money. They will be boastful and proud, scoffing at God, disobedient to their parents and ungrateful. They will consider nothing sacred. They will be unloving and unforgiving. They will slander others and have no self control. They will be cruel and hate what is good. They will betray their friends, be reckless, be puffed up with pride, and love pleasure rather than God. They will act religious, but they will reject the power that could make them godly. Stay away from people like that." When we look at that, here's what I want you to understand. We're looking at that in our life right now, today. This is exactly what we're seeing. We have in America the whole political system that's going on. And while we are not getting into politics, here's the thing I want you to see. There is a group out there who is constantly telling people misinformation. They are not being honest and upfront with what's going on. They are showing things that are not true to who God is, yet they claim to be part of God. You see, I cannot hate you because of the color of your skin, because of your gender. I cannot want what's not good for you for any reason and call myself a follower of Christ. Because the moment I do that, now I'm a hypocrite. All of us who choose that path are what become hypocrites. And so when we talk about lovers or self, one of the things that we all begin to see is that these lovers of themselves focus on what is in their best interest. They don't stop to think about what is in the best interest of everybody in the country or everybody in the world. And these are the things that we need to look at. I want to tell you a story because a lot of times we don't, when we look at it on the political spectrum, we can't always tell what that looks like in our day to day lives. So I have an issue, and I'm going to share this with you guys. And my issue is when smokers smoke around non smokers. Okay. And so I have a dog. His name is Max. And I love my little Maxie. He's out in North Carolina visiting with his man right now. And little Maxie is had a daycare provider, okay? And she would put him in the car. Well, one day she rolled up in front of my house and she had a cigarette in her hand and my dog in the car. Now, to a lot of people, that doesn't matter. But to me, that's huge. And let me explain to you why. As a dog, I have dominion over Max. There is never a time I need to worry about him overpowering me because I have already been given dominion. Even though he's super strong, even though he's all those things, he's not somebody that I worry about. He cannot make a choice to put a cigarette to his lips. So you now put a being that has no choice into a vehicle with a chemical that has the power to give them lung cancer. That's thinking about yourself first. That's what those verses are talking about. When you are at a point where you are not willing to look at what you do to all the beings, all the people in God's world, what you end up doing is you end up creating a world where your number one concern is you. And that's a problem. You see, when we smoke in a car with kids, when we smoke in vehicles with animals, we are taking away their choice. They don't have a choice. They don't get to say, yes, I want to be a part of this. We make that decision for them. And so, what we want to look at is that really the decision that I am trying to make for this individual in my life? And so I'm sorry, I don't know what is going on with my phone. It just went crazy. Um, and so when we sit back and we are talking about being our brother's keeper, we have to remember that we take care of not only people, but we take care of the animals too. That our love is supposed to extend to them, that our belief and understanding. And so when we put anything that can't make a choice into a position where now they have to choose or they have to be someplace where they can't choose to be, then what we're doing is we're causing harm and we're bringing harm to that individual. And we don't often want to look at that because within us, we often are so selfish that we don't even realize our selfishness is selfishness. We want to disregard it. We want to pretend like that's not actually what it is. No, I'm not being selfish. You know, when I watch people drive down the road with all the windows up, two babies in the back, and it's covered in cigarette smoke, same thing. When people have animals and they blow, drug smoke in their faces, these are all things that we do to the things that we are supposed to be in care of, in concern for. And when we act out, when we put them last, we are putting ourselves first. And that's how the Bible can talk to us about being at that place in Second Timothy chapters 3, 1 through 5, that we are lovers of self and lovers of our money. Because if we pay for it, then it don't matter what we do. I pay for it. Okay, yeah, you pay for it. What does that mean? Does that make you less of a ruthless person because you paid for it all of a sudden? No, it doesn't. And these are the things that we stop looking at. These are the things that we stop being concerned with. And when we do that, now we can't be our brother's keeper. Now we have to struggle through that. Now we have to sit back and look at what it is that we're doing. And we don't want to do that. What do you mean? I didn't do anything wrong. And that's what we say. We come up with all these reasons why we're in the right and everybody else is in the wrong. So here's the thing, when we look at the fact that we are here to take care of one another, it puts us in a very important position with the Father. And here's why. In John 8:32, Jesus tells us, the truth shall make us free. It makes us free. We don't like that the Bible says the heart of man is desperately wicked. We don't like that. But here's the thing. I'm going to make this very simple for you. God tells us that Jesus said, there's none good, but why do you call me good? There's none good but the Father. Okay? Why does he say that? Well, because with among us humans, there's none good. So let's just look at the 10 commandments, okay? We don't live by the law, but just as an example, let's look at the 10 commandments. Honor thy mother and thy father. Do we do that all the time? Thou shalt not lie, steal, kill, covet thy neighbor's wife. Do we not covet? Every time you look at somebody else's something and you want it, that's a covet. Anytime you lie on your taxes, anytime you tell a little white lie, you know the line, a little white lie ain't never hurt nobody. Some people say a little black lie ain't never hurt nobody. It's still a lie. Our hearts are desperately wicked. Love God with all thy heart, might, and strength. Do we do that? No. Oftentimes, when it's convenient, we will try, but we don't go out of our way to genuinely love God for all that he is. We don't go out of our way to obey. You know, it's funny because in Second Samuel, Saul was going out. He had been told to get rid of all the Amalekites, everything they owned, get rid of them. They come back. Amalek, the king, is still alive, and there are sheep. And Samuel walks up to him and says, what are you doing? And Saul says, what? I did everything. I'm leaving a burnt offering. And Samuel goes, obedience is better than sacrifice. We don't want to obey. We want to do what we want to do. And that's where you get into that smorgasbord religion. And that's why it becomes so hard to be our brother's keeper. Because let's be honest about people. As a whole, people are a problem. They do things, they hurt you, they say things that hurt you, they are not thankful, they're ungrateful. You've gone out of your way, and what do you get? You get a whole bunch of people who can't even say thank you. That's the reality of working with people. They are going to sometimes they're going to turn around and rend you, and that's part of this walk. And let's be real. We like the blessings, but we don't like the payments we have to go through because those payments are not always fun. Well, the thing is that when you're your brother's keeper, sometimes you have to hold them down, even when they don't want to be held down. You have to hold their feet to the fire, even when they don't want their feet held to the fire. I remember there was one time a gentleman I was working with, and he had a drug issue. And he did not like having his feet held to the fire. He wanted to do what he wanted to do, and he didn't care what happened. But the reality is, He only began to care when it began to cost him something. But it took someone being willing to stand there and not budge and not change. And that's why God tells us to be steadfast. We have to be steadfast because when we're steadfast, we're a brick wall. They can bounce off of us, they can do whatever they want to. And what ends up happening is that they break before we break. That's why in the word, Jesus tells us that it is better for us to fall on him and break than it is for him to fall on us and crash. And it's funny because I see in the comments someone said, well, at least I ain't as bad as him. And is that not a comment that we make all the time? Like we compare ourselves to other people, but that comparison is all about superiority and supremacy. I am better than this person because I am not struggling the same way that they are. And those are the things that really keep us stuck in the places that we're in because we're constantly coming up with excuses as to why we're not as bad, why we're not this, why we're not that. And those are the things that hurt us. I want to talk about in verse 4 of Second Timothy chapter 3, it says, they will betray their friends, be reckless, be puffed up with pride, and love pleasure rather than God. Is that not the society that we've become? We are more worried about what we have and what we can play with and how we can have fun than we are about making this world a better place. You see, we have to be about the business of our Father at all times because when we're about his business, we are in a safe place. It's a place that keeps us safe from the harm, the chaos, the struggle, the trouble that all comes when we're working with our brothers and our sisters. It can be a problem, everybody. I get it. But the blessings that come with it at the end are phenomenal. And I think that oftentimes we forget that. You know, let's be real. If we're going to talk about the truth shall make us free, then let's keep it real, shall we? Sometimes serving God is a real disappointment. And people don't ever want to call a spade, but you know what? Tonight I'm going to call that spade. It's a disappointment. God will send you on a path. You'll be walking down that path. Everything is fine and Jim Dandy. You're moving along. And then all of a sudden, it just blows up in your face. And you're sitting back going, what just happened? God, I don't understand. And then you sit back and you look at a later point in time and you go, oh, well, I didn't do this and I didn't do that. But now you've lost the blessing, or at least you think you've lost that blessing. And you see, that's the part where all of this gets really confusing is when we focus on what we think we lost. No, we didn't lose anything. Everything is just kind of in a holding pattern for us to learn. Sometimes God will allow us to walk into scenarios so that we have the understanding and the belief. You know what? No, we're going to have a conversation because now I'm going to be my brother's keeper. And let me explain something. You know, sometimes God does stuff for us so that we can see that he believes we're worthy. Sometimes God will give you a house and you'll be super excited about it. And then everything will crash and burn around you. And we'll sit back and go, well, God could have prevented it from happening. Okay. Or maybe the world just is what it is. And he wants to see if you'll be thankful for the time that you had there. It's not the last time you'll own a house. It's just that you had to move on. And sometimes during that time, you have to give the house back to a bank or you have to do any of these things. And guess what? They will get their money. And if you're buying it from a person and you're paying them and all of a sudden things go wrong, the day will come when you get to take care of them financially for the gift that they allowed you to utilize. But you have to keep walking. And if you look at that disappointment as though you weren't worthy, then guess what happens? You continue to live your life in a place where it's not worthy. And then let me tell you what that leads to. It leads to you not making plans. That's what it leads to. And then it leads to you not having hope for the future. Why? Because you are already disappointed. And so now you create a system where your mind and your body think that there's no reason for you to be on this planet. And then you begin to create a path where there's no reason for you to still be alive. And then what happens? You miss every opportunity that could have been. How many times do we do that to ourselves? If we're honest, we do it a lot. We naturally draw to the negative. That's one of those areas where it's so vitally important that when we see our brother going through that, we sit down and say, okay, what is it that you want? What is it that life has for you that you really want? What you'll find is that most people have zero clue what it is that they really want in life. They don't know. And that's the area where our brother often needs us the most. And we think, well, I figured out what I want, so why can't you figure out what you want? Do we show up at somebody's house who's extremely depressed and say, I'm going to help you walk through this? No. Instead, what we do is we sit back and we go, okay, you'll be fine. But they aren't always fine. That's when we know that what we're focused on is ourselves. That's when we know that we really just don't care. And it's devastating. It's one of those things that leaves us broken and it leaves them broken. It's for those reasons that we are our brother's keeper, that we step up. You see, it's not always about money. Sometimes you will need money, but sometimes it's about helping them overcome the negativity and the hardship and being stuck in a place that is gut wrenchingly painful. Gut wrenchingly. When people don't know how to overcome the darkness and no one is there to be that voice of reason, no one shares how to move through that. That's one of the problems that we have. So, what does it mean to be my brother's keeper? If we go back to Genesis 4 and 9, had Cain truly been his brother's keeper, he would have gone to Abel and he would have said, what did I do wrong? He wouldn't have let his pride rise up. Because you see, the reason that we are not our brother's keepers, that we don't look after each other, that we don't stop to think about the ramifications of our decisions on those around us, including those who are not a part of our immediate family, is because we're too caught in who we are and our pride. We don't stop to think about the dog as we light up a cigarette. We don't stop to think about the kids as we smoke weed in their proximity. We don't think about these things. It's what I want to do, and I'm going to do what I want to do. This is my house. They live here. And so God looks at you and he says, are you who I gave this gift to? Because on that note, you are not appreciating the gift that you have been given. Because I swear to you, the non-smokers are always the ones who get lung cancer before the smokers do, and we don't care because it's what we wanna do at the time that we wanna do it. So it's vitally important that we take a minute to educate our brother and to say, let me help you understand what the reason is that God said this. Let me help you understand why God was looking out for us. Because let me tell you what happens when an action of ours causes pain to something else. We now have a scar in our spirit, in our heart, in our soul. And we sit back and we kick ourselves wishing we had made a different decision. Why live your life in regret? How about you just make the decision today and then just don't do it? You always have an option. You can train yourself to resist doing many of the things that we choose to do. But then we have to put someone before us. And so what we begin to do is we begin to justify why we won't do that, why we won't put someone before us, why we won't say, you know what? I don't want to do this. Instead, we sit back and we go, listen, it's going to be fine. Everything is going to be fine. I'm okay with what I'm doing. Everybody should be okay with what I'm doing. I'm doing great. And we live in this world filled with lies. And we pretend that everything is great until it's not. And then we have to look for someone to blame. When you protect your brother, when you keep your brother, you put them at the forefront and you say, you know what? This is something that I want to do, but I want you to be okay more than I want to go do what it is I want to do. And you put it to the side. Doesn't mean you won't be able to do it. It just means that right at that moment isn't the time. That's one of the things. We help our brother get to their first, second, or third level, something that is a basic. Anything that we have overcome, we can help someone deal with. If we haven't overcome it yet, then obviously we don't want to be out there helping other people do what we haven't done ourselves, right? We show people the right way to do things without fear or worry. There is a right and wrong way, and they don't have to believe in the principles of the Bible. It does not change the fact that the principles are always going to stand. When we treat our neighbor as ourselves, somehow miraculously things work out for us. We're able to figure things out. We're able to make things happen that we never imagined were going to be able to happen. So, when you get there, when you're looking at these different things that you're doing, when you can see all the different things, it begins to make a difference. You know, God did tell Cain that sin was crouching at the door and that if he didn't make a different choice, it was coming for him. And Cain chose not to listen. Don't be afraid to help out your brother because when you need that help, someone will be there for you. As long as you're not harboring that root of bitterness. Don't be angry at people for being who they are. They just are who they are. Let them be and understand that you have a bigger calling on your life and you will do significantly more than you are giving yourself credit for. When we protect our brother, when we keep an eye out for them, we make life better for ourselves. And that's the beauty of the Bible. And that's the beauty of the question that God asked Cain. Because in that moment, he gave Cain a choice. All we have to do is repent, to realize what we've done and fix it. It's when we don't want to that we end up in these places. When we show people how to do things the right way, the reason we do it without fear or worry is because God was very clear in Isaiah 55. He told us, "My word will not return unto me void. It will do everything I set it forth to accomplish." So you already have his word that it's going to do what it needs to do. Your job is just to make sure the message is delivered. Deliver that message and then go on with your business. And sometimes he's going to ask you to deliver a message to people you ain't trying to talk to. Deliver the message, no matter how difficult it is. Deliver the message. Finally, I want you to understand that there are always rewards. If we go over to Matthew 25 and 40, we are going to start there because I love what Jesus tells us here. And it's something that we all need to remember. Then these righteous ones will reply, "Lord, when did we ever see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink, or a stranger and show you hospitality, or naked and give you clothing? When did we ever see you sick or in prison and visit you?" And Jesus says, and the king will say, "I tell you the truth. When you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it unto me." You see, you can always honor your father because when you do it to your brother, you're doing it to him. It's a safeguard that the Bible puts in everywhere for us to always be successful. It's yet another verification that when our focus is not us, it's his people, he's always watching. And that's all we need to remember. The Bible has a safeguard for us. Focus on other people. Help them get where they want to go and watch me take you where you want to go. Lastly, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. You don't lose when you put your neighbor or your brother first. And we're not talking about to contorted and twisted views. That's a whole nother issue. And that's a whole nother thing we would have to talk about in another episode because that involves you usually trying to hide. When you are genuinely putting yourself out there to help others, there are going to be some who harm you, but there are going to be others who are truly thankful for all that you've done. And those are the ones that you're looking for. You will be honored and uplifted by the Father when you do that which is right and you don't hold on to what it is you think you want. You have the power to change your world. You have the power to change your life and the lives of others. You can't control how they use it, but you can control whether or not you do your part. And on that note, if you loved this video, which I know all of you did, I want you to click the like button, hit subscribe, and ring the notification bell. So every time we go live, every time we release a new video, you'll know. Meanwhile, I will see you Tuesday for hanging with the fellas and Wednesday on our new channel, The Biblical Understanding of American Politics. And then I'll see you next Friday at Bible study. Have a wonderful weekend.